Hey, welcome back to Pacifica Science, everybody. I want to keep today's presentation as close as possible to what we did in class. And if you look at the setup around me, all this stuff has to do with what we were doing with our experiment, and the notes are on the board behind me. So let's jump right in. Keep it to 10 minutes or less, whereas the class period today took about 30 minutes. We have our pendulum set up here. We've got a metronome, the guitar, because a lot of the things that we study in the class have to do with periodic motion, with waves, everything from looking at ocean waves to looking at light, we're talking waves. And then the periodic motion of our pendulum is one of the things that we study intently in 7th grade. We study the spectrum of light, what causes it, and how you can figure out different frequencies based on wavelength. And the point is, a lot of this has a lot to do with music. Now, I will not torture you with my guitar playing like I did first and second period today, but if you look at the pendulum experiment, there was a lot to be learned from this one experiment. First, let's jump into the brain pop. We start with the brain pop today, and the brain pop we started with was on atoms and molecules. Now, our book talks a little bit about molecules, a little bit about atoms. We touch on them in this class, and really, as deeply as we go in the 7th grade class here, is the following, that there's about 100 elements on the periodic table. Teachers always put up one of these periodic tables in their classroom, and all it is a list. Just like right now, I'm seeing everybody on this grid on my screen, doing a Zoom meeting. This is just a list like that. The reason it takes this particular shape, and I ask people to draw the shape today, is because it makes it easy to figure out an element's properties based on where it falls in this list when you put them together in this fashion. There's other ways you can make the periodic table too. This isn't the only way you can do it. The point being that when you're looking at the 92 known elements, naturally occurring elements, and there's some others that we make in a lab artificially that then break apart very, very quickly. The atoms themselves, the named elements in there, the 92 of them are ones you've probably heard before. Copper, gold, hydrogen, carbon, things like that. It's a little bit difficult at first when we start talking about matter being broken down into atoms, because it turns out, yes, you can break an atom apart, and inside are protons, neutrons, electrons. Protons are made of quarks. There are subatomic particles. We're not going to concern ourselves too much with those, but the long and the short of it is, we want to just kind of keep in mind that those 92 naturally occurring elements are the building blocks of molecules, or the things that get together to make the molecules, and that's what we need to understand a little bit of if we're going to understand why, for example, a virus has us doing distance learning like this right now. When you look at the smaller things in an atom, I just want you to be aware of that. We will talk probably about electrons a little bit more in detail, and we definitely will talk about protons and neutrons later on, because we do this thing about carbon dating, which lets you know how old certain elements are when you find them in once living things. But for now, just know that matter is made of atoms. There's about 100 of them out there, 100 different types out there, and there are things that are smaller than atoms. The periodic table wanted this little picture to be up there because I want us to get a sense of what that table is about. It's just a list of the atoms that we know about, the elements that we know about. And then finally, this particular compound is up there, water. Why? Incredibly important in biology. It is the compound of life. If you look at the Mickey Mouse molecule, which I know most of the students had seen before, you've got 2 hydrogens, the little ears on Mickey Mouse, attached to 1 oxygen. The thing that we wanted to add to it, this is important, we've got a positive charge by the ears, if you will, the ears of the molecule, the hydrogen atoms, and a negative charge down by the O, the oxygen. And it turns out water is polar. It's got these opposite charges that make it very, very important for solutions. And you already had that word in chapter 1 to talk a little bit about solutions. So we drew H2O, which I know we've heard of before, as far as the chemical formula for water. And we want to just become aware of what an individual molecule, the smallest piece of water that you can have, one molecule of water looks like. From there, we went on to talk a little bit about our experiment. So we switched out the screens like we always do. Now, when I switch out the screens, we usually take about a 3-minute break. About 1 million years of human evolution has not prepared us for sitting in front of a screen all day, which is why I try and keep these videos to 10 minutes or fewer, which is why we keep the class lessons, the synchronous learning, where in front of a camera, we try and keep that to definitely a half hour or less, because it's not easy being in front of a screen all day. If you check out the Pendulum Experiment, the very first time we did the Pendulum Experiment, we changed the mass at the bottom of the string. And we let it swing, and we checked it out. We did it for 10 swings, and we divided by 10, because it's really hard to get the exact time for one swing. This gives us a little bit better data. And we found out something. And our data looks something like this. A really quick drawing on the board shows that no matter what we did to our independent variable, the mass, the dependent variable, the one that we thought would be dependent, did not change. The period, the time it took for one swing out and back, that didn't change. We could have had 10 grams, which we did, for the bottom of our mass, or for the bottom of our pendulum, pardon me, or we could have had 50 grams, which we also did. Didn't matter. This line is telling us something. This is the nice part about graphing things in science. This is why across the hall, you'll be doing this in your math classes. You are finding out, based on this picture, it's telling us a story. It says no matter what you do to this variable that you're changing, it is not having an effect on your dependent variable, pardon me. Your independent variable, the one that you get to choose, the one you always put along the x-axis, it doesn't matter. That tells a story. This, by the way, you don't see this too often. It's called a perfect correlation, but it basically says that there's no connection. Sometimes you might see dots scattered all over the place. This is mentioned in your chapter 1. When the dots are scattered all over the place and there's no line, there's no pattern to it, it tells you that there's no connection. Whatever it was you changed in your experiment here did not seem to have an effect over here. And now remember, there's lots of variables to account for in any experiment. Then we did this. We did this experiment today, really, really quick. There's just 2 dots on the graph right now. And we'll add a couple more later on the homework. But we know that the mass doesn't seem to make a difference. So we just kept the mass the same. When we did this, we let it swing. Only this time, we changed the length of the string. The first length that we did, we measured it, 50 centimeter long string length. The next time we did it, we stopped that swing here, wrapped it around a couple of times. I won't do that right now because of time. And we let it swing again, and this is what we found out. As you go from 50 centimeters, it took about 1.5 seconds for each swing. As you went down to 20 centimeters, our pendulum here only took 1 second for each swing. As we fill up our data chart, we will find out that these dots should make an almost perfect straight line. Now here's the really cool part about doing these experiments. It turns out, let's just say we are doing our experiment. Try to get the cap off my pen here. Let's just say we're doing our experiment and we do 30 centimeters, and then 40 centimeters. And it's making a nice line. Let's say we do not have the ability. We don't have 100 centimeters of string. We don't have the ability to go up here to 100 centimeters. When we connect those dots, we can make a good prediction on what our period would be if our string was 100 centimeters long. Now, will it always be accurate? Maybe, maybe not. That's why we're doing the experiment. The point is, this gives us the ability to make a prediction. This, by the way, when it's sloping up like this, it's called a strong positive correlation. It means that as we change our independent variable, in this case, string length, it is having an effect on our dependent variable, in this case, the period. Think about a practical application of something like this. When I was a kid, I used to go up to an aunt's house in San Francisco. My mom and dad would go up there to visit. It was this old flat in the city. It was very Lemony Snicket. You know, I was a little kid, and it was this big, dark, long hallway in this old San Francisco flat. At the end was one of those old grandfather clocks, you know, with the kind of the pendulum at the bottom that ticks. And I remember, you know, it's kind of a little creepy place for a kid to be hanging out, you know, or just waiting, oh, can we please go home? It was one of those old-time San Francisco places. This grandfather clock at the end of the hall had a pendulum on it, and it used to tick back and forth. Looked like something like a Harry Potter movie or a Lemony Snicket novel, if you've ever read any of those. Think about what a pendulum is in terms of this right here. You've probably seen it if you take music. That's why I had the guitar here earlier. It's a metronome. And a metronome is just an upside down pendulum. And if you look at moving the weight towards the end, if you let it tick, it ticks very slowly. You make your string shorter, or in other words, you take the weight and you put it closer to the place where it's attached. We let it swing again. Ticks faster. If you have one of those old grandfather clocks we used to call them, and it has a pendulum swinging at the bottom, if it's running too quickly, you lengthen the string a little bit, you pull the weight down a little bit, that'll slow your clock down. And of course the opposite is true. If the clock is running too slowly, you shorten it a little bit. You adjust it based on the length of the string will affect the time that the clock is keeping. That's pretty cool. If you check out the rest of our notes, will be put out there at pacificascience.org, also in your Google Classroom. We will have our first assessment. It says TBP, to be posted. Your reading assignment is pages 11 to 21 still in the book. That was for week 2. No questions associated with that. That's just your reading assignment. And then finally, don't forget to check your page 10 answers. Have a great day, everybody. If you're wondering about the tree cookie around my neck, made this last November down in the Redwoods while doing some outdoor ed. And that was in honor of our forests right now and our redwood forest and all the people trying to put out the fires in the redwood forest down the coast. So this is from last year, thinking about Big Basin and Jones Gulch and all those gorgeous places right now which are threatened by fire. Have a great 3-day weekend. Talk to you all soon. Bye-bye.